Hi, Domenica here from easysewingforbeginners.com. In this video today I'm going to be sharing with you some of my top tips for working with Minky fabric. Now Minky fabric is a lovely, soft, cuddly fabric which is perfect for making babies' toys or little cuddle rugs or security blankets. The only problem is it is a little bit frustrating to sew with. So I'm going to share some of my top tips with you. Now, one of the first things I'd recommend when sewing with Minky is to use a wider seam allowance. So usually you might do a 1/4 inch seam allowance. When I sew with Minky, I would do about a 1/2 inch for 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And this is because Minky can curl while you're sewing. And also if it does shift, you've got a bigger margin for error with your excess fabric in your seam allowance. The other tip I'd say is when you're pinning your fabrics together to use lots of pins. You can never use too many pins when it comes to pinning Minky, and I'd recommend pinning them probably about an inch and a half apart. Okay, even though it is a little bit time consuming, it's worth it in the end. The next thing I'd suggest is using your walking foot. I've got my walking foot on my machine here. Now your walking foot is great for reducing the amount of slipping and shifting in your fabric when you're sewing, and because of the nap or the pile on the Minky, it does tend to shift quite a lot. So I'd highly recommend a walking foot. Also, if you have it on your machine, I recommend adjusting the pressure of your presser foot. So on my machine here, I've got a little lever here. I'm not sure if you can see that, but usually when I'm sewing Minky, I would have the pressure on about a 2 for this machine. So it's not pressing down so hard on the fabric that's going under the foot. Also, I'd recommend adjusting the speed of your machine if it can do that. When I'm using my walking foot, I always have it on a medium anyway, but just sewing on a slower speed just helps you pick up issues before they go too far. Now, when it comes to cutting your Minky fabric, if you can, I'd recommend using your rotary cutter and a ruler, just because Minky can stretch and shift quite easily while you're cutting it. So if you want nice straight lines, then I'd recommend using your rotary cutter. Now when you're sewing with Minky, I recommend taking note of the nap. So the nap is the direction that the fur is going in. Okay, so with this you can feel it. If you brush one way, it would feel smoother than if you brush the other way. And if you brush the other way, it usually will change colour a little bit as well. Okay, so when it comes to doing something like this cuddly blanket, I like the nap to run downwards, mainly because when people pick these up, they love to touch them and they run their hand downwards. So it's just nicer if the nap's going downwards as well. Now for needles, I recommend using a 90-14 or a 14-90 size universal needle. I find I just get better results when I use this size needle. And I use it all the time for most of the other fabric that I sew with as well. Now, if you're using a dotted Minky like this, or really any Minky, I wouldn't recommend ironing it at all. So if you iron this embossed Minky, it will flatten the dots and you'll lose them. So I'd recommend trying to spray with some water and putting it in the clothes dryer for a little bit if you've got some stubborn creases that won't come out. Or you can try steaming it with the iron from a distance as well to see if that works. And one last tip is to keep your lint roller handy. When you're cutting Minky, you will find that you will get fluff everywhere. So having one of these handy to pick up the fluff as you go will reduce a bit of the mess. So there you have it. They're my top tips for sewing with Minky. It's a beautiful fabric and I'd recommend sewing with it just because of the results that you get from it. So it's worth persevering with it. I hope you found this video useful, and don't forget to subscribe to keep up to date with all my other videos and sewing projects that I bring out. And happy sewing!